we honor the G family for their strong ties to Palama settlement. The late Bill G grew up in the Palama neighborhood, participated in Palama's programs, and later became an athletic director and winning basketball coach. Bill's wife, the late Harriet G, was also a very generous donor. Daughters Linda G and Pat G have continued their support of Palama settlement throughout the years, with Linda as a former board member and Pat helping to keep Palama in the public eye.
My dad was a Palama boy and proud of it. In the days when he was growing up, to be a member of the Palama settlement community was something of great pride. There were not a lot of organized sports teams in those days, and my dad was a sportsman from the heart and soul. He participated in barefoot football, basketball, track and field. Palama was his second home.
He played all sports. He was a sprinter over there. I remember he told me that he'd never lost a race until one day, I think he was in the state tournament, and some guy blew right by him, and he said, "Who's that?" And they said, "That's the Palama Flash," a new guy who was running under the Palama colors.
He was on the 1937 championship barefoot football team. In those days, kids didn't have shoes. He would talk about sharing one pair of shoes among his siblings, and when somebody outgrew the pair of shoes, they would cut the tops off, and that's, you know, everyone was poor in those days, but rich as far as a feeling of acceptance and good guidance when Palama was involved.
Later on, I wrote a column for the Star Bulletin, and that's where I worked with Harriet quite often. Harriet and I, of course, were charter members of the monthly Chinese Dim Sum Club, composed of retired Star Bulletin types. And when I lost my sight, I had to switch from chopsticks to a fork. I couldn't see the food, but I could stab it. And so Harriet, it turned out that then there were now two members of the Chinese Dim Sum Club who used a fork, me and Harriet G. Harriet used a fork all her life. I don't know whether she ever learned how to use chopsticks.
Bill was my mother's brother, so he is my uncle. Uncle Bill and my grandmother lived where the Mayor Wright homes are now. And I remember my uncle always coming to Palama Settlement. It was like his second home.
He used to say it was where he was taught to go on the right side of the tracks, or the people here kept him on the right side of the tracks, kept him from going to the wrong side of the tracks. A lot of discipline, a lot of community spirit, a second family for all intents and purposes. Look at this neighborhood. It is a poor, poor neighborhood. It's a very old neighborhood whose makeup hasn't really changed over the decades. So you've got a legacy of poor kids easily going to the wrong side of the tracks, were it not for some place that they could go to and spend their time usefully instead of hanging out behind the gym, doing things they shouldn't be doing. His great interest was sports. He wrote sports for the newspaper eventually, and so he became a basketball coach here and essentially just became one of the advisors to kids who were just like him, who needed guidance and a place to come to that was safe.
I should see the camaraderie around all the younger people, you know, and like a place where I guess they feel that they can feel safe and enjoy and, you know, really extend their daily life.
Both of my parents instilled in us a really strong sense of loyalty and responsibility, and how that was manifested was in giving back to Palama. In his way, he stayed involved in coaching athletics and later writing about his days at Palama. And after he passed away, then we tried to continue that legacy, just by supporting Palama in any way that we could. So there's a real strong tie in terms of loyalty to a place that was really loyal to him.
They big-hearted people. They grew up here and they felt that they'd succeeded, they'd made it. So they felt that they ought to give something back, and they did. They did all their lives.